exactly when Gus Riley started eating supper alone. They could tell you, easy enough, that he never stopped. Same corner table at the boarding house, 6 nights a week. One plate, one fork. A chair across from him that had gone so long and used a whole dining room had quietly agreed, without ever discussing it, to leave it be. 10 years, near enough. Long enough for the town to stop seeing it as sad and started seeing it as simply Gus, a fact of the place, like the Smithies ring at dawn or the quarry whistle at noon. It took a boy too young to know better than to ask, to notice that a habit and a wound aren't always the same thing. And it took a mine inspector's ledger, 6 months later, to finally clear the way for the answer. But that came later. It started with sweeping. A blacksmith shop generates more ash and iron filings than one busy man has hours to manage, and Gus Riley had been meaning, for the better part of a year, to hire it done. He just hadn't found the right excuse. Then, on a Tuesday in April, an 11-year-old boy with his father's jaw and his mother's careful eyes showed up at the smithy door asking after odd work, and Gus Riley, who understood exactly what kind of family sent a boy looking for odd work in a company town, found his excuse standing right there in the doorway. He just didn't let on that's what it was. Quarry Junction ran on scrip, the way most company towns did, and scrip ran on Cornelius Sharp. He managed the company store, which meant he managed, in the practical sense, what every family's wages were actually worth, since scrip spent nowhere but his shelves at prices he alone posted. It wasn't illegal. It was simply the arrangement, built one payday at a time until nobody remembered agreeing to it. Families in good standing with the company store got credit through hard months. Families that fell behind got watched. And Sharp, a trim, precise man who dressed better than a quarry town strictly required, had built a comfortable life presiding over both. He'd built it, in fact, on rather more than store. Walter Talbot had worked a quarry face until a rock slide put an end to that, 18 months back. Alive, thank God, but his left leg never right again. His wages cut to what light duty paid, which was considerably less than a family needed. Ellen took in washing. Jem, 11, took whatever odd work a boy his size could find, and brought every dime of it home without being asked to. The doctor's bill for Walter's leg sat on the company ledger still, chipped it slow, renewing its grip on the family a little each time store prices crept up faster than wages did. It was, Ellen had come to understand, a debt built to outlast the injury that caused it. She never said that thought aloud. Some thoughts, in a company town, a person keeps to herself. Gus paid Jem $4 for that first Tuesday sweeping, a grown man's day wage, for perhaps 3 hours of a boy's work, and paid deliberately in real currency, not scrip, though the smithy dealt in scrip as often as cash from company customers. Jem noticed the amount and started to say something about it. Gus cut him off before the boy could talk himself out of fair wage. Ash don't sweep itself lighter for being swept by a small hand, he said. Wage is the wage. It wasn't quite the truth, and both of them likely knew it. But it was the kind of lie a proud family could accept without flinching, and Gus Riley had learned, somewhere in his own hard years, exactly which lies served a purpose. The Tuesday arrangement became a weekly one, and Jem, sharp, watchful, the way children get when they've had to grow up faster than planned, started noticing things about the quiet blacksmith beyond the wage. The same corner table, every evening, through the boarding house window. The same one plate. He asked his mother about it once, and she gave him the answer the whole town gave, the one that had long since stopped sounding like an answer at all. That's just Gus. Jem turned it over for a few weeks the way boys turn over things that don't sit right, and on a Tuesday in June, sweeping done, wage paid, no particular reason chosen over any other day, he finally just asked the man himself, Mr. Riley. Jem leaned on the broom, working up to it. Why do you eat supper alone? Gus's hand stilled over the forge a moment, not startled. Exactly. More the stillness of a man hearing a question he'd stopped expecting anyone young enough to ask. A man gets used to his own company, he said, which was true, and also nowhere near the whole of it. Jem accepted that the way children accept most adult non-answers. Filed away, not forgotten. He went home and told his mother about it at supper. The way boys tell their mothers things without quite understanding why they matter. Ellen Talbot set down her fork. She didn't say anything that evening, but she'd started thinking about it. Jem kept coming Tuesdays through the summer, and something easy grew up between the boy and the blacksmith that neither of them named. Gus taught him, without ever calling it teaching, how to read a piece of hot iron by its color, how to hold a broom so his back wouldn't ache by dusk, small competent things a boy could carry proudly home. Ellen watched her son's regard for the man deepen from a distance, the way mothers watch such things, and she began quietly to ask around. Nothing pointed, nothing that would embarrass anyone, just the ordinary curiosity of a woman wondering about a man her son had taken to admiring. What she learned took a few weeks to piece together. It went back further than she'd guessed, and it had Cornelius Sharp's name in it, right at the center. The story, when Gus finally told a piece of it, not to Jem, but to Ellen on her porch one evening when she walked over to pay him herself and stayed to talk, went back 11 years. He'd been engaged, a fine, warm girl named Caroline, and a wedding date set, and a future that looked, for one whole spring, entirely settled. Then Cornelius Sharp arrived in Quarry Junction with a company position, and a salary a blacksmith couldn't match, and by autumn Caroline had a different wedding date, and a different name waiting for her. Gus didn't blame her, not really, not anymore. He blamed the arithmetic of it, that a woman choosing comfort over a smithy wage was simply sense, dressed up as heartbreak. He'd eaten alone ever since, not from grief exactly, from habit that had outlived a reason for it. Cornelius Sharp noticed the Talbot family's changed circumstances the way he noticed everything. Through the ledger, store credit requests, slower that summer than they should have been for a family on light-duty wages. A little outside cash, evidently, keeping the Talbots further from his shelves than a company family in their position had any business being. He traced it without much trouble. The blacksmith, paying the boy real currency, week after week. It wasn't a fortune. It wasn't, strictly, against any rule Sharp could point to, but it was a leak in an arrangement he'd spent years sealing tight, and Cornelius Sharp had never once, in his whole career, let a leak go unaddressed. He decided the boy's father needed reminding who kept his job secure. The word came to Walter through his shift foreman, delivered casual as weather. Light-duty positions, a foreman said, were under review company-wide. Nothing personal, just prudent, given the medical cost the company had extended the Talbot family on credit. Walter understood the sentence the way a man understands a threat, wearing a policy's clothing, keep the family dependent on the store, or risk the only wage they had left. He told Ellen that night, low, at the kitchen table, Jem asleep and unknowing in the next room. Ellen listened and did the things she'd learned to do in 18 hard months. She got quiet and she got practical. Then we don't stop taking Gus's wages, she said. We get smarter about the rest. It was Ellen who said the line first, on a Sunday not long after, standing at Gus Riley's smithy door with a look on her face that clearly cost her something to arrange. Come to supper, she said. Tonight, Jem's been asking. Gus started the reflex refusal, the same one he'd been giving the whole town for a decade, and something in her steady, unpitying face stopped him halfway through it. I'll set another place, Ellen said, before he could finish declining. He came. It was, by his own quiet reckoning later, the first meal he'd eaten at a table with more than one chair filled in longer than he cared to count. Jem talked through most of it. Nobody minded. Over that supper and a few that followed, the two families' troubles came out plain between them. Sharp's threat, the doctor's debt, the script that never quite stretched. Gus listened, and did the kind of arithmetic a man does when he's finally got a reason to use it for someone besides himself. He'd been doing repair contracts with the quarry company for years. Will work, tool mending, forge repairs on their equipment, paid partly in script, same as everyone. He'd never once compared what that script was worth against the store's own posted prices for equivalent goods. He did, that week for the first time. The company had been paying him script, valued a fair margin under what the same script actually bought at Sharp's own shelves. Years of it, quietly, the way these things always were. The opportunity arrived, as these things sometimes do, from an unrelated direction entirely. Walter's old accident report, filed, as state law required, The day of the rock slide, finally worked his way to the top of a state mine inspector's docket. 18 months late, the way government dockets run in territories that far from a capital. A routine visit. Safety review, mostly. But Gus, hearing the inspector was coming, saw the shape of an opportunity a slower man might have missed. He gathered his repair invoices. He talked quietly to two other tradesmen in town who'd long grumbled about script conversion without ever comparing notes. By the time the inspector arrived, there was rather more waiting for him than one rock slide to examine. Word reached Sharp before the inspector's wagon did. The way word always reached Sharp first. He wasn't troubled. He'd managed a decade of small grumbling without it once amounting to anything, and he said as much to his store clerk, precise as his ledgers. Let the inspector look at safety, he said. The books are mine to keep, always have been. He straightened the shelf of overpriced goods with the satisfaction of a man who has never once been made to answer for his own arithmetic. Payday was 2 weeks out. The inspector, hearing there might be more to examine than one accident, agreed to stay through it. Sharp found that mildly inconvenient and nothing more. Payday at the Quarry Junction works drew the whole workforce into one line at the company's script window, same as every fortnight. Except this fortnight, a gray-suited state inspector stood beside Sharp's clerk with his own tally sheets, comparing figures nobody had ever thought to compare out loud. Gus's invoices laid beside years of script payments. Two other tradesmen's records doing the same. And behind them, once word traveled down the line. The way word does at a payroll window with nothing else to occupy a man's weight. A dozen families' own quiet suspicions about their credit balances, finally spoken aloud to someone with the authority to check them. Sharp watched the line grow longer and grow quieter, and understood, with a particular chill of man watching his own ledger turn against him, exactly what was happening. The inspector worked through it methodically, the way honest men do work that doesn't require embellishing. Gus's script converted against the store's own posted prices, short by a consistent margin going back years. The tradesmen's invoices, the same pattern. And when he pulled the store's credit records for a sample of families, the Talbot among them, the doctor's bill debt Walter had been chipping at for 18 months turned out to include a markup on medical supplies that no company policy on file actually authorized. Sharp tried the sentence he'd have used on any single complaint. Clerical oversight, easily corrected, and got exactly as far as the inspector holding up a second family's ledger, then a third, all bearing the same quiet arithmetic. A pattern, the inspector said mildly, is not an oversight. What came out alongside the fraud, almost as an afterthought, was the older story. Gus Riley, the blacksmith Sharp had once out-earned for a woman's hand, standing at the very window where Sharp had spent a decade being the more comfortable man. Someone in the line said it plain, not unkindly, the way small towns eventually say the thing everyone's always known. Sharp had built his whole life on being the man with more to offer. It turned out he'd been shorting the scale the entire time to keep it that way. He didn't argue the figures in front of a payroll line that had just watched the arithmetic done publicly. He agreed to the inspector's terms, back wages, corrected pricing, Walter's job and rate restored in full, and let the matter close the only way a corner man's pride allows. Quietly. Walter's position was secured that same week. Back pay followed within the month. The doctor's debt recalculated down to what it had honestly been all along. Gus received his own back-owed difference. Not a fortune, but enough, along with the town's newly respectful business, to hire the sweeping done proper and pay Jem simply because the boy was good at it now, not because the wage needed disguising as anything. Sharp kept his position, watched closer now by a company that didn't love bad publicity any more than bad math. No ruin, just daylight, which in a place like Quarry Junction tends to do most of the correcting on its own. The Talbot Sunday supper became a standing thing that autumn, and then a weekly thing, and then simply a thing nobody in either household thought to call remarkable anymore. Gus's corner table at the boarding house sat empty most evenings now. Not sat empty, the way it once was, simply available, the way a chair is when its usual occupant has somewhere better to be. Jem, older that winter and taller besides, asked him once, half joking, whether he still ate alone most nights. Gus considered the question with the same care he gave everything. "Not most nights," he said. "Ellen," setting the table behind them without being asked, without needing to be, said the only thing left to say, said another place. It wasn't a question anymore. It hadn't been for some time.